Dr. Kanika Verma is working as an associate professor in the Department of Home Science, University of Rajasthan, Jaipur. Presently, she is the president of Indian Dietetic Association, Jaipur Center. She has many publications in national and international journals of repute. Her areas of interest are clinical nutrition, sodium in diet, junk foods, and NCDs, to name a few. We welcome you, ma'am. May I request Professor Ila Joshi to present a token of our gratitude to Dr. Kanika Verma. Thank you, ma'am. The speakers for the session are Dr. Gurdeep Kaur and Dr. Hemant Malhotra. May I request Professor Ila Joshi to present a token of our gratitude to the speakers. Dr. Hemant Malhotra. Dr. Gurdeep Kaur. Thank you, ma'am. May I now request the chairperson to take over the session.
Innovations in better management of non-communicable diseases. We have discussed what is non-communicable diseases. Now let's talk about the management. It is indeed an honor to introduce Dr. Hemant Malhotra, the first speaker of the session, who's going to give a talk on cancer today and tomorrow. Dr. Malhotra is working as Professor of Medicine at SMS Medical College and Hospital, Jaipur. He is the head medical oncology at Birla Cancer Hospital. He has graduated from SMS Medical College and has fellowships from Tata Memorial Cancer Center, Sloan Kettering, New York, and he has virtually set up the oncology center in the SMS Medical College. He is also a consultant to WHO on the guideline development for biosimilar oncology molecules. He has to his credit more than 200 international and national publications. He is at present the Secretary of the Indian Society of Medical and Pediatric Oncology. So I welcome you, sir, and I request you to start the session.
Students, friends, colleagues, girls, it's nice to be here. I was here, I think, 4 or 5 years back, and I really enjoyed delivering that talk. And I hope I enjoy delivering this talk too, and I hope you enjoy the talk too. So my most sincere thanks to the faculty, the organizing committee of this meeting for inviting me. And what I'm going to talk to you today is what you should know about cancer and cancer chemotherapy. I'm a chemotherapist. I'll give you an overview of management of cancer, but I'll focus on chemotherapy. So let me first start with asking you, with a show of hands, how many of you have been associated with a cancer patient in your family, in your friends? So that is about half of us here. That just highlights to you the importance of this problem. And initially, okay, let me start. So I bring you greetings from the Savai Man Singh Medical College and Hospital. I did my MBBS from here, my MD from here. Then I went out for a few years, did my specialization, and then I'm back at this institution. So I've been associated with this institution since 1975. That is such a long time that I feel like a ghost sometimes. And this is the R.K. Birla Cancer Center, the place where we do a little bit of oncology work. And this is what I'm going to do, talk to you about the cancer problem today, the cancer care in our country, how can you prevent and early detect cancer, which is relevant to each one of you. The principles of cancer treatment, principles of chemotherapy, some new forms of therapy which have come now, the targeted therapies, individualized therapies, like one size not fitting all, not giving the same treatment to everybody, but individualizing the treatment to the specific person and the specific cancer, and then I'll conclude. So this was what was happening in the earlier part. The health scenario of our country was dominated by communicable disease. Communicable disease, you know, means infections. And now we have non-communicable disease dominating the scenario, and most of the deaths now, even today, are because of non-communicable disease. And this is expected to increase very significantly. It is predicted that by 2020, almost 50 million deaths in the developing world will be because of non-communicable disease. So this is not a disease of the developed world anymore. It is very much our disease now also. And this is what we're going to talk about today, this communicable disease, the emperor of all maladies and the king of all terrors. And I hope by the time I finish, I will remove some of the terrors from your hearts and minds. Cancer was not what it is 30 years back. It is something which is eminently detectable, preventable and curable today. The cancer problem in India is huge. We call it an epidemic, and I think most of us think that we are at the brink of a cancer tsunami in our country. And that is why it is extremely, extremely important that you be aware about this disease, about the early symptoms of this disease, how to prevent this disease, how to diagnose it quickly, and then seek appropriate treatment. Not only important for you, but important for your environment also, your family, your friends, your social circle. If you are enlightened and aware about this disease today, you may diagnose a cancer tomorrow in the first stage where it is eminently curable. So in India we expect about 1 million new cases every year, and about 3.5 lakhs of these will die every year. And we are anticipating a 500% increase in this incidence. And this is primarily because of two reasons. One is because of our aging population. Cancer is basically a disease of old people. It happens most of the time in old people. And secondly, because of the rampant, uncontrolled use of tobacco, still continuing. So this is projections from the World Health Organization, 2005, 2030. The cancer, the deaths is going to progressively increase. And please note, these are deaths, the dark part of the bar is deaths in the developed countries, and the light part of the bar is deaths in the developing countries, our country. And this is going to be huge in the coming 20-30 years. And again, the purpose of my being here is to make you aware about this. So this is the incidence which has been calculated in India by the our cancer registries. And this is one thing which we should remember. We are about 100 people in this hall just now, I think as a conservative estimate. So 10 out of us, the people who are present in this hall just now, will in their lifetime develop cancer. Now, whether you are going to be in that 10 or not depends upon several factors, and one of the important factors is what kind of lifestyle you have. If I try to change my lifestyle just now, it will have no impact on whether I develop cancer or not. But you, at your age, if you change your lifestyle, if you have an unhealthy lifestyle now, it will prevent 60% of the cancers. So if you change your lifestyle, your neighbor doesn't, she is going to be in that 10% and not you. So that is one of the important key messages which I am going to give to you by the time I finish. So this is again, in Rajasthan also we expect a very large number of new cancer patients. We expect a large number of cancer patients, new cancer patients every year in Jaipur itself. This is again data from the ICMR cancer registry, data from Delhi, data in the males. Most common cancer is lung cancer. Second common cancer is cancer of the head and neck area, means mouth, throat, food pipe. And these constitute more than 50% of cancers in the males. And these are eminently preventable cancers. And how are they preventable? By foregoing the use of tobacco, whatever form of tobacco. These are tobacco-induced cancers. In the females, commonest cancer today, at least in the urban settings, is breast cancer. Next common cancer is uterine cancer. And these two cancers, which form about 60% of cancers in ladies, is eminently detectable in the very early stage by a little bit of awareness. Breast cancer by self-breast examination and a small simple X-ray known as mammography, and cervical cancer by something known as a very simple test which is known as the pap smear test. So 50 to 60% of cancers in males are preventable. 50 to 60% cancers in females can be detected in the first stage, where they can be cured to the tune of 90% by very simple tests, just by being aware that you can detect these. This is some data from the one population-based cancer registry in Chennai, again ICMR registry. And the reason why I'm showing this to you, the second commonest cancer in males in south of India is stomach cancer. So even in our country, we have different cancers in different regions. And the reason is known to you guys, known to the nutritionist, known to Kanika, known to Madam Kanan. And this is directly related to the diet. Again, one small pointer that diet and lifestyle is directly linked to cancer. And this is the preventable part of cancer. Cancer death rates, this is data from the United States in men. Most of the cancers, stomach, cancer of the colon, rectum, prostate, pancreas, incidence has been decreasing from 1930s to the 2000s. Here is one cancer, the incidence of which has been exponentially increasing, and this is cancer of the lung. And here it is plateauing in the late 1990s and starting to decrease. This is because of the aggressive anti-smoking campaign which happened in the West, and this is now beginning to show fruit. This is beginning to show effect in the form of reduction in lung cancers in males in the United States. What is happening in the females? Again, most cancer incidences is decreasing over several decades, but the incidence of this cancer, lung cancer, is increasing. And unlike the males, this is not starting to decrease. Why? Because more and more women in the Western Hemisphere are taking to smoking. So this is exclusively because of this. And again, a direct proof to you that smoking causes cancer. Avoidance of tobacco is the biggest thing which you can do to prevent cancer. Now, whenever you talk of any intervention, any treatment, any disease in our country, you must bear this in mind. This is the economic spectrum in our country. 5% of patients are in this category who have a lifestyle like this, who nobody needs to worry about. I don't need to worry about them. The government needs to not worry about them. They can go to the best centers in England, USA and take treatment. So they are very amenably able to take care of themselves. What we need to worry about this middle class and this poor class. These guys, people over here, their whole effort and energies are limited, restricted to survival, how to get the next meal. If they have a disease, and if they have a disease like cancer, and it's a devastating consequence for them. And this is the section in which prevention is the most important and treatment is the most important, and this is the section which needs the most help. Now, who will develop cancer? Several times I hear stories that I have a neighbor who's been smoking, drinking for 40 years. Nothing has happened. He's not developed cancer. And that guy never smoked, never drank. He's developed lung cancer. He died in 1 year's time. Why is this? Why is this discrepancy? So basically you have a balance between the environment and your genes. And you have some cancer producing genes which are known as oncogenes, and you have some cancer preventing genes, right? And then you have the environment. If you have a very strong set of cancer preventing genes, and even if your environment is cancer producing, the net result is that you don't have cancer. And if your environment is perfect, you live a great lifestyle, and you have cancer producing genes, or you do not have cancer preventing genes, then you develop cancer again. So, ladies and gentlemen, as of just now, you cannot change your genes. You have to deal with whatever God has given you. Maybe in the future this will change. At the moment, the only thing which you can change is your environment. So that is again most important take-home message for you right in the middle of my presentation, that environment, if you have a good environment, then you can prevent a substantial number of cancer and you can reduce your risk of cancer. Control of cancer is by prevention. early diagnosis, which is by screening tests, and adequate multidisciplinary treatment. So these are some warning signs of cancer, warning signs of early cancer. This, I think, should be made into a poster and put into your corridors, because this is not only important for you, this is important for your family, this is important for your friends, and this is important for your neighborhood. Change in the bowel or bladder habit, a sore or an ulcer which does not heal, unusual bleeding or discharge from any orifice of the body, a thickening or lump in the breast or anywhere else, ingestion or difficulty in swallowing, obvious change in the size of a wart or mole. एक कोई तिल है आपको, तिल एकदम से बढ़ने लग गया, उसमें पेन होने लग गया, get it checked. Or there is a nagging cough, or there is a hoarseness of voice which stays for a few weeks' time. All these could be symptoms of early cancer, and these should be just gotten into your mind, never forgotten and never ignored. In the oncology setup, as for every disease known to human beings, prevention is better than cure. How can you prevent? Cancer can be avoided. Primary prevention, first, foremost is tobacco. Then alcohol in excess, sometimes female hormones, radiation, and some occupational hazards like asbestos, benzene, uranium, and exposure to sunlight. Fortunately, you may or may not believe it, God has given us a good sunscreen in the form of that pigment in our skin. So we have very few incidences of skin cancers. If you go to Australia or you go to the United States, melanoma, which is a skin cancer, is a huge problem. So don't be after that fair and lovely thing too much. So this is again an important thing which I want to highlight to you, which I've already touched on earlier. So about 2/3 of the cancers today are because of lifestyle. And not only diabetes, not only heart disease are considered lifestyle diseases today, but cancer is also considered a lifestyle disease. And according to the WHO, the biggest epidemic of our time is not the product of a virus, but is our rapidly changing lifestyle. And this is the impact of lifestyle on cancer. This is males, this is females. Potentially avoidable cancers in the males related to diet is 44%, and in females is 67%. And similarly for tobacco, radiation, drugs, occupation, and some hormones. What is a cancer preventing diet? Just some glimpses of that. We have top experts here. Fat is not only fatal for heart, for brain, for lungs, but it is also fatal for malignancy. And a high-fat diet has been proven to be associated with cancers of the breast, colon, pancreas. High-caloric diet has been directly linked with cancers of the uterus, breast, cervix, ovaries, gallbladder. And this is what a good diet is. It has been estimated from one study in Germany that men who have 5 servings of tomatoes per day for more than 5 years, they have 17% less prostate cancer than men who are not exposed to a diet rich in beta-carotene. Such a simple prevention of prostate cancer. Why don't you go and start this with your dad today? 5 servings of tomato every week. He will have a decreased incidence of prostate cancer by 20%. So high fiber diet reduces the risk of colon cancer, rectal cancer. The list which I showed you, 10 common cancers in males, this is the last 8th or the 9th cancer in India. And if I were showing you the same list from the US, it would be the 2nd commonest cancer. Why? Because our diet contains a lot of fiber. Tobacco and cancer, I could speak till tomorrow evening on tobacco and cancer. So just give you some highlights. Tobacco killed 100 million people in the 20th century. Tobacco kills enough people all over the world in one day, which is equivalent to 5 jumbo jets crashing every day. Imagine one jumbo jet crashing, it is headline news. But this agent is killing people equivalent to 5 jumbo jets every day. And nobody is making a noise. It doesn't make headlines. In our country, we have data to suggest that smoking or tobacco chewing starts at age 15 years of age in half of our population. So each and every one of us has an onus to change this, to stop this. We have to make groups, we have to make lobbies, we have to make associations and force the government to enact legislation so that this doesn't happen. It is not only my responsibility as a cancer specialist, it is your responsibility also. And on a smaller scale, starting from today, your brother, your father, your boyfriend, if they are smoking, make sure that they stop smoking from tomorrow. That would be a big service which you are doing to your family, your friend, and your community. All forms of tobacco are bad. All forms. Don't let anybody tell you that weed smoking is better than cigarette smoking or gutka chewing is better than cigarette smoking. Every single form of tobacco has been directly linked to malignancy. Cigarettes are the most heavily advertised product in the world, and it is the only product in the world which, if used as directed, kills the customer. Nobody highlights that. It also produces impotence. If you have trouble in explaining to your brother or your boyfriend to stop smoking, this is what you should tell him. In the West, tobacco companies are being sued millions of dollars for health-related effects. I don't know why it hasn't happened in our country. Maybe one of you will become a hotshot lawyer tomorrow and start this. And every single organ of the body is damaged by tobacco, and there are 23 different types of cancers which are directly linked to tobacco. I'm just listing some of the common ones. So this is the lung of a non-smoker, and this is the lung of a smoker. Imagine if this was happening to your face, would you still be smoking? So let's move on from this. I need to show you the global tobacco consumption in the developed world is decreasing and has been decreasing for the past 20 years. The production of tobacco, the production of cigarettes is increasing every year. So where is this poison going? It is being dumped in our countries. Every single pawn shop in our country, in your city, has all those fancy cigarettes, you name it, Dunhill, 555, whatever. And again, it is our social responsibility to do something about that. In just 2 countries, India and China, they account for more than 40% of the global tobacco consumption. So let China do what they want to, but I think we should do something in our country. Passive smoking, the father is smoking, what is the fault of this little girl? And again, passive smoking is almost as dangerous and deadly as active smoking. So let's move to secondary prevention. How can we detect cancer early? Self-breast examination and an X-ray of the breast, which is known as mammography, are very good tools to detect breast cancer. And each one of you ladies must know how to self-examine your breast. There is enough material available on the internet. We have enough charts at our cancer center in R.K. Birla Center in SMS. So Kanika can tell you. So you must know self-breast examination. Practice self-breast examination. Have your family do that. That could be life-saving. Then a Pap test is a simple test which can early detect cancer of the cervix. Pelvic examination and ultrasound can early detect cancers of the ovary. ENT examination and chest X-rays for people who are tobacco chewers and heavy smokers. Occult blood in the stools, looking for blood passage in the stools, is a good screening test for detection of cancer of the intestine. And this is a blood test, prostate-specific antigen, for early detection of prostate cancer in men. So this again is important, and if you are not practicing it or do not know about it or not aware about this, make yourself aware. This is like a simple screening test for the oral cavity cancer for patients who are subjects who are heavy consumers of oral tobacco. HPV vaccine, how many of you have had this vaccine? Show of hands. Not good. How many of you have heard of this vaccine? So this is like the ostrich phenomena. Nothing will happen to me. If I stick my head in the sand, nothing will happen to me. Each and every one of you must, it's a small cost, government doesn't provide it just now, we're trying very hard for the government to do it, but each one of you, and if you have younger sisters, must have the cervical cancer vaccination. So India is the global capital of cervical cancer, and the link between cervical cancer and this virus, human papilloma virus, is well established now. 99.97% of patients who have cervical cancer have this virus, and we now have 2 vaccines which is available. So I don't know whether you can do it today, but from tomorrow, those who are not vaccinated must get vaccinated. Both these vaccines are available in Jaipur, and you can go to any gynecologist and they will advise you how to take this. So what is the prognosis of cancer? Once cancer is diagnosed, then what happens? Do all patients die? In the best countries of the world, in the best centers of the world, about 50% of cancers can be cured today. In our country, because our patients come late, they come in advanced stage, we can cure 1/3, we can control 1/3, and we can't do anything for 1/3. So it must be our effort, my effort, your effort, to move patients from this category to this category, and from the controllable category to the curable category. And this all has happened because of improvement in supportive care, early treatment of infections, very good blood banking. We have extremely good medications now to prevent nausea and vomiting, to prevent fall of counts, which happens because of chemotherapy. We have safer drugs which are less toxic to the heart, less toxic to the kidneys. And we have drugs now which do not produce hair loss. You can have chemotherapy now, a combination now, which doesn't produce hair loss. We have very good pain management now, and we have very good psychological and nutritional management and support now. Anybody recognize this lady? This is Shannon Miller, 7 Olympic and World Athletics gold medal, and she is an ovarian cancer survivor. This gentleman is Lance Armstrong, winner of the Tour de France, which is a cycle race, very grueling cycle race, 7 times. He was also caught in some drug scandals, so he is not my favorite person now. But he is still a cancer survivor who's done wonders on the physical front. So this is the cancer team. You have the diagnostic team, the pathologists. In the treatment team, you have the surgeon, the radiation oncologist, the medical oncologist, and you have a support team consisting of the blood bank, psychologist, and the other people. And you have the treatment of cancer by surgery, radiotherapy, or chemotherapy, and usually it is a combination of these. Like you have the Air Force, Navy, and the infantry for the defense of the country. You have surgery, chemotherapy, and radiotherapy. And these are not competitive modalities, they are complementary modalities. And now the focus has been shifting from radical to conservative. Initially, when we had a patient who had a cancer of the larynx or the sound box, we would remove the sound box, but now we are preserving the sound box. If somebody has a cancer of the leg, earlier the choice used to be amputate, remove it, but now we are preserving the limb. So we are moving from radical to conservative. Similarly, for chemotherapy, initially we used to do high dose chemotherapy, now we are using targeted chemotherapy, which target the cancer cell itself, produce very little side effects, produce good beneficial effects. And radiotherapy also has evolved from a big area to be radiated to a pinpoint area to be radiated with advancing technology. So there is a big list of cancers which are curable with chemotherapy, the blood cancers, particularly blood cancers in children, some kinds of lymphomas, some germ cell tumors, some gestational trophoblastic tumors, some bone tumors, some kidney cancers, and some muscle tumors which are curable. And there are lots of cancers which are controllable with chemotherapy. And there are lots of other diseases which are chemo-responsive, not curable, but they can be controlled for prolonged periods of time. Unfortunately, there is a list of cancers which is very poorly chemo-responsive, but progress is happening on this also. You can see this child You can see these big lymph nodes he has, these lumps over here, and after only 1 month of treatment, everything has disappeared. Similarly, this huge mass in the lungs, you can see this is not a normal lung, this is a normal lung, and this is Hodgkin's disease, and with a few cycles of chemotherapy, this is completely disappeared. Big mass over here, lymph nodes, Hodgkin's lymphoma, with 4 cycles of treatment, completely disappeared. Again, big mass over here, good response. Pediatric cancers today are cured to the tune of 10%. Means cancer in children, very high cure rates. They must be treated very, very well, very, very properly. What is targeted treatment? Targeted treatment is like moving from the, so to say, dinosaurial era to the genetic molecular applied treatment, and moving from this one simple cell in 1975 to this complex cell in which we know the receptors, we know the cytokines, and we are using that to implement progress. And conventional chemotherapy used to be like bombs, and targeted therapy is like our cruise missiles or our guided missiles. And we have now targeted therapy. We know the genes, we know the receptors, we know the chemicals which talk between the tumor and the environment, and we have several targets which we can use. And this has been used for several diseases, including blood cancer, breast cancer, lymphoma, and targeted therapy is available. And these are the magic bullets which we are using today. And this is producing difference in this is chronic myeloid leukemia type of blood cancer. This is what we used to have in the 60s and 70s, 5-year survival of 20%, and this has increased to 95% in the past 20 years. We have drugs which target the angiogenesis, the blood vessels which the tumor produces to feed the tumor, and we have this monoclonal antibody which targets this process. And when we use this, the blood vessels shrink, the nutrition to the tumor dies, and the tumor dies. And this you can see the effect of this in several clinical situations. This is the patient of malignant melanoma treated with this wonderful new immunotherapeutic drug. This is at diagnosis, and at week 108, complete disappearance of the lesion, which never used to happen in the past. There is a huge tumor over there, treated with this targeted therapy, completely normal in only 4 cycles of treatment. So this is not something, this is not science fiction, this is happening in today's world today. And this is a tumor known as basal cell carcinoma. Earlier there was no treatment other than surgery. Now we have this targeted treatment and producing like unprecedented responses. These drugs are not without toxicities, they have toxicities also, but we are beginning to understand them and anticipate them and prevent them. So this is the kind of targets which the tumor throws up, and we have to recognize these and ignore this, which is a tough job. Immunotherapy is the next big advance in cancer. We know now the reason why the immune system doesn't attack the cancer cells, and we have developed agents to remove this immune block. And this again is one of the major advances which has happened, and a couple of drugs are available for use now, and this is producing incredible responses, and this is an area of very important interest. One size doesn't fit all. Earlier we used to treat all the patients with one kind of treatment, but we have realized that one size doesn't fit all, and now we are tailoring our treatment not only to the tumor but also to some genetic expression which happens. This is some advance which has happened in breast cancer. We can calculate the risk score by these genetic testing of the breast cancer and only give treatment to this group of patients who have a high risk of recurrence and not give treatment to this group of patients. And the same thing is happening in lung cancer also. So, ladies and gentlemen, the paradigm of treatment for cancer is changing. In addition to our standard treatments like surgery, radiation and chemotherapy, we also have these new agents which are targeted agents, biological therapies, and immunotherapies, and this is expected to significantly improve outcomes with cancer. Couple of summary slides. The cancer incidence is increasing, expected to reach epidemic proportions. 60 to 70% of cancers are lifestyle diseases. Prevention is better than cure. Early diagnosis is the key to success, and screening tests help in early diagnosis. Most cancers are treated with a multidisciplinary approach. Targeted therapies are available with minimal toxicities for most cancers now. Immunotherapy is the next big thing in cancer treatment, and there has been a significant improvement in the prognosis, significant improvement in cancer diagnosis. We are now individualizing treatment, and most cancers are now being either cured or converted into chronic diseases. And this is the motto which we have: to cure sometimes, to control often, but to comfort always. And let's pray and work towards the tobacco-free world. And this is my last slide. In a perfect world, when we have ways and means and modalities to prevent ourselves from cancer attack, we have to make do with what I have just told you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for a very informative session on cancer. I hope the terror has gone from cancer, because it's now no longer that terrible a disease, but yes, prevention is definitely better.
Any questions? You have time? Yes, ma'am.
Sir, there are a lot of advertisement in the newspaper about predicting cancer risk by some blood tests. How predictive that is?
So those are just advertisements. It is not science, and it is like, I don't know whether I can use the same analogy again. It is like Fair and Lovely making you fair. It has about the same substance as of just now. It is possible that in a year's time, or in 2 years' time, or in 3 years' time, those tests are validated and they are moved into clinical practice, but as of just now, no.
Sir, can I ask a question? For the benefit of the girls who are sitting here, could you tell the age of HPV at which they should be?
Ideal vaccination schedule is starting in the pre-pubertal time, so age 3 to 5, first injection should be then. But for girls who, so to say, missed the boat, now is the time, even now. Like the basic premise of that is, before sexual activity starts, the vaccination should start, right?
So you've been talking about prevention and as far as the diet is concerned. So how can cancer survivors prevent recurrence?
Very good question. So once we've finished with the treatment of cancer, whatever the standard treatment is, surgery, with radiotherapy, with chemotherapy, or any combination of these three modalities, sometimes we give them maintenance treatment also. There are no hard and fast rules and ways of making sure that the cancer doesn't come back. Other than obvious things, if you have lung cancer and you had surgery for lung cancer, and if you start smoking again, that is like stupid. So of course you will not do any of the cancer producing activities or indulge in any of the cancer producing behavior. The only important thing for a patient who's completed cancer treatment is to be aware of his or her own body, not to ignore symptoms or signs, and to regularly follow up and take checkups with your treating doctor. So that if a recurrence has to happen, you can detect it very, very early, where sometimes you can still cure it.
It's an antioxidant-rich diet is what is supposed to be, having about 6 to 7 servings of different colors of fruits and vegetables is what we say.
Agreed.
Different color, different pigments.
Yes,
Okay.
the darker colored pigments are better.
Yeah,
There are a lot of functional foods now for targeting certain cancers like prostate, lycopene. These are ingredients based.
agreed.
Because we should be taught.
Completely agreed, yes. Alright, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the talk as much as I enjoyed delivering it.
Yes,
Thank you.
Working from last 21 years at All India Institute of Medical Sciences at the Department of Dietetics. And I think Gurdeep is better known for the DietCal that she has developed, the software for dietary calculations, which is a big blessing for all the people who are doing research. So I would invite Gurdeep now for our next topic, Indian CKD diets, myths and realities.
Nutritionists over here, and it's always a pleasure to come to a college, because You see your lecturers, 10 years from now, you will come down, they will look the same. Alright? We people working in the hospitals, we grow old a little faster, you know. They don't grow a little faster because the young vibrations coming from all you girls. Keep them young always, you know. So for us, we look for an opportunity to always come to a college, right? That the various myths and realities associated with it. Well, we all know one of the major problems in these patients is malnutrition, right? Now, when you probe further to find out what is the cause of malnutrition, you'll find that the one which really irritates a nutritionist is an inadequate intake. Now, when you interview a patient before each session of counseling, you'll find that one of the major reasons behind this low intake is the myths, the misconceptions, the various beliefs he has as far as the food is concerned. Right? Now in our country, if you're, say, traveling in a bus, by mistake, if you happen to say that you're a diabetic, you get 10 advisors then and there. Right? So by the time the patient comes to us, he has received so many different advices that now he's not very sure that what you are saying is correct or not. Right? So now the need of an hour is when you are doing your counseling has to be based on the concepts. Your concepts have to be clear so that you can put your logic, reasoning behind each yes and no what you're telling to your patient. Right? So that is called as conceptual counseling, which you should start now so that the patient understands. Even an illiterate patient, you try to explain him things, he will definitely understand and then he'll follow your diet. Right? Now, coming to a nutritionist, a dietitian, whenever she plans a diet for any disease condition, she follows these two steps. First, she comes to the nutrient requirement based on various recommendations and in consultation with the doctor as to how much of amount of protein or potassium or whatever she has got to decide with. And then she converts that into the amount and type of food. Now, of my various visits to different forums, giving talks, what used to really happen there, I used to always follow this storyline. And usually because of the constraints in time, the second part used to get a little ignored. So what used to happen that at the end of the talk, I used to get many questions. Some of them, ma'am, बहुत अच्छी talk रही, बस मैं आपसे एक छोटा सा सवाल पूछना चाहता हूँ, दाल दे सकते हैं कि नहीं दे सकते? Right? So now what I've done is, I have shifted my storyline and now today, for this topic, I have brought in few questions some food items which are always in target as far as renal nutrition is concerned. And then now I give you my logic and reasoning behind, and then I leave it to you to give your comments, right? I'm not imposing my logic and reasonings, but then my logic and reasonings are always on scientific recommendation. So I'll give behind my scientific recommendation, and then I'll leave the comments for you. Now, the various questions which I have started collecting from all these lectures, whatever I've been given, into different categories. The questions asked by a nephrologist, the question asked by a nutritionist, and the question asked by a patient, right? Now, the questions asked from the nephrologist were, these are the few ones. Ma'am, can our patients take dal? Can he take palak after leaching? Can our patients take citrus fruits? Can our patient take banana? And then, we know that our general population as such take very low protein. So is there any need for a protein restriction? No. Well, the questions coming from the various nutritionists used to be, can we introduce parantha on an everyday basis in an indoor patient? Should our renal patients have tomatoes. I know of still many hospitals where the cooking for renal patients is done without tomatoes, right? Now, should potatoes be leached? Should chicken or fish be leached? Now, questions arising from patient. Patient question नहीं पूछता है, patient बताता है. कैसे बताता है? मैडम जी, हम जानते हैं कि जो भी किडनी शेप का होगा दाल वो नहीं खाना है. आपकी राजमा हो गई, आपका लोबिया हो गया, सोयाबीन हो गया, किडनी शेप के होते हैं, इनको तो बिल्कुल छूना नहीं है. अब जो बिहार वाले आएंगे वो कहेंगे मैम मसूर की दाल खा सकते हैं, बाकी कोई दाल नहीं खानी. यूपी वाले आएंगे कहेंगे अरहर की दाल और मूंग की दाल खा सकते हैं, बाकी कोई नहीं खानी. राइट? हाँ, सोयाबीन नहीं खानी है लेकिन सोयाबीन की बड़ी खा सकते हैं. दूध, दही, अंडा छूना भी नहीं है, बिल्कुल नहीं, पाप लगेगा. एंड now, since ours is a referral hospital, by the time the patient comes to us, he's already been for nearly a year or 6 months on his, restricted diet, whatever he has been following. So he comes and says, मैम 6 महीने से जब से हमें पता चला है कि हम किडनी के शिकार हैं, किडनी की बीमारी के शिकार हैं, तब से हमने सब घिया, तोरी, टिंडा और कोई हरी सब्जी नहीं खानी है. मन तो करता है पूछूं कि भाई तेरे यहाँ पर जो टिंडा और घिया मिलता है वो लाल कलर का होता है, वो भी तो हरा कलर का होता है, वो काहे खाता है. राइट? नाउ it's a sad scenario. So I'll take questions one by one and I'll give you my answers to it. Can our patients take dal? Yes. Preferably after leaching. How much? Aadhi katori. Which katori? This katori. Now, I have taken the katoris according to the North Indians, the population I deal with, and these are the common used katoris. And this, when I say one katori, C katori, this is C katori which holds around 210 ml of water till the rim. Okay, this is the most commonly used katori. Why half a katori? Yes, because we know that we have to fit in both the good quality protein and the second quality protein. So in our calculation, it doesn't come more than half a katori. Now, which kind of dal? Now, before referring to the various dal, let me tell you about the soybean. Now, this soybean nuggets or the soybean, people say that it has a good amount of protein, high amount of protein, yes, but how about the quality? Now, please note that it is the soya isolates which are put in various commercial formulas. Okay, disease-specific formulas, your protein formulas, they are the ones which have protein digestibility corrected amino acid score of 1, which is equivalent to your egg protein, right? It is not the soya which we commonly use or the nuggets, alright? And plus, the soya is very, very rich source of phosphates and potassium, right? And if you think that you can leach some potassium or phosphate from the wadis, no, you can't do it because it's a texturized product. You cannot do anything in that, right? Now coming to all the dals, dhuli dal khani hai, chilke wali khani hai, ye nahi khani, no. As far as our nutrition knowledge goes, till date, the authentic database, what we have is the NIN book, Nutritive Value of Indian Foods, right? That is the only authentic data we have, and according to that data, you check that data, you will find that as far as the phosphates and as far as potassium is concerned, all of them are almost the same, right? Now, you do this exercise, you see the value, आपको देखिए कहते हैं कि छिलके वाली दाल नहीं खानी, साबुत दाल नहीं खानी. आप देखोगे कि मूंग साबुत में कम potassium and phosphorus है than the मूंग धुली, right? Now, another thing what we should stop doing is just keep checking the raw values per 100 gram. No, दोनों को बना करके देखो कि एक कटोरी ये और वही कटोरी ये, फिर कैलकुलेट करके देखो कि कितनी वैल्यू आती है, राइट? सो व्हेन आई डिड दैट, आई फाउंड आउट दैट जब मैंने धुली हुई दाल और मूंग दाल को दोनों को कुक करके उसमें टमाटर प्याज जो भी डालता है दोनों में वैसी ही क्वांटिटी डाल करके देखा, सो द वैल्यूज आर कमिंग इक्विवेलेंट, राइट? सो एज फार एज धुली नहीं खानी, छिलके वाली नहीं खानी, देयर इज नो सच इश्यू, राइट? नाउ coming to the leaching of dals, yes, we do advise leaching of dals. Now, in a patient, say if he has a good urine output, he does not have any catabolism, right? Catabolism, because I'm talking from the potassium point of view. He has a good urine output, his serum potassium is alright, he's in the early stage of CKD, there's absolutely no need for potassium restriction, fine, there's no need for leaching business in dals also. But then, there's another component for which we advise the leaching business, this is phosphorus. Each katori of your dal provides around 80 to 140 milligrams of phosphorus, right? And it is for this phosphorus that we still want the leaching business. Now, why do we want leaching business in because of phosphorus? Because we know that phosphorus restriction in the early stages of CKD is, how do you use a pointer? This one? Okay. Now phosphorus restriction right over here is very, very important in the early stages itself, because it contributes to the genesis of hyperparathyroidism, and this is one of the contributing factor of metabolic bone disease which you find in these patients. Right? So early restriction of phosphorus is very, very important. You may not start potassium restriction early, but you will have to start phosphorus restriction very early. Okay? Now, coming to the leaching technique. Now, there is a saying कि आप जैसे दिखाते हो ना, जैसे आप पोर्ट्रे करते हो, वैसे ही अगला बंदा कंसीव करता है. Now, when you are teaching, when you are counseling, your counseling session should be such that the patient should not find it difficult at all. Now, you tell him कि भाई हम दालों में ना चाहते हैं कि कुछ एक छोटा सा टेक्निक यूज हो जाए. अब दाल जो है पेशेंट के लिए अलग से नहीं बनेगी, सबके लिए वैसी ही बनेगी. ये करने से बाकियों का कोई नुकसान नहीं होगा, लेकिन पेशेंट का भला हो जाएगा. बहुत छोटी सी चीज है, क्या करना है? कोई भी दाल, जैसे मूंग की दाल हम लोग कोई भिगोता नहीं है, लेकिन आपको क्या करना है, थोड़े से गर्म पानी में भिगो दीजिए, कम से कम 1 घंटा भिगोकर के भूल जाइए. वो पानी फेंक दीजिए, दोबारा फ्रेश पानी डाल करके उसको नॉर्मली जैसे पकाते हैं पकाइए. पकाते वक्त सिर्फ हम लोग कभी हल्दी डाल देते हैं, कई लोग बहुत सारे मसाले डालते हैं. जो डालना है आपको डालिए, सिर्फ नमक मत डालिएगा, क्योंकि कुछ हम दाल में से निकालना चाहते हैं और नमक उसको निकलने नहीं देता. Now this is a proven study which shows the salt hinders the leaching procedure. Okay, so सिर्फ नमक नहीं डालिए, बाकी दाल बनाइए नॉर्मली जैसे बनाते हैं, और उसके बाद थोड़ा सा बैठने दीजिए, नीचे से गाढ़ी दाल लेकर के पेशेंट के लिए उसमें वही टमाटर प्याज का मसाला जो आपने बाकी के लिए बनाया, नमक कम करके पेशेंट के लिए वही यूज कीजिए, अपने लिए वही यूज कीजिए. तो कोई बड़ी बात है क्या? नहीं मैडम, ये तो बहुत छोटी बात है, आराम से हो जाएगा. राइट? सो द वे यू पोर्ट्रे द पेशेंट टेक्स इट दैट वे. वो कहते हैं ना, किसी की लड़की भाग गई तो एक जना जो है बहुत छुपता छुपाता है सबसे, और वो क्या होता है, लोग उसको पॉइंट आउट करके, हाँ ये देखो इसकी लड़की भाग गई उधर. और दूसरा एक बनता है, अरे भैया भाग गई तो क्या करें, अब क्या कर सकते हैं. तो दूसरा बंदा कहेगा, हाँ भैया क्या कर सकते हैं, भाग गई तो भाग गई. Right? So similarly, counseling session is that the way you portray, the patient takes it the same way. Right? Alright, now there are a lot of leaching procedures. Now this is what I have jotted down from the first paper which came in 1969 till late. Alright? Now, you have to, when you are selecting the phosphorus product, you have got to select those products which give less phosphorus per gram of protein. Now all the protein rich items are also rich in phosphorus. So you have got to literally see which are the ones which provide less phosphorus per gram of your protein. Now, एक अच्छी न्यूट्रिशनिस्ट, एक अच्छी डाइटिशियन वो होती है जो कभी किसी को ना नहीं करती. You should never start with your no list. No, your diet chart should never have the no list. और अगर वो ना करती भी है तो पता नहीं चलता. खाना है, अरे भैया जरूर खाओ, लेकिन ऐसा करना कि जब खाओगे तो ये निकाल देना, इतना रखना, वगैरह वगैरह. राइट? उसको ना नहीं सुननी है, पहले ना बोलनी नहीं है उसको. राइट? लेकिन certain things when you have got to really enforce no, you have got to totally say नहीं भैया ये तो छूना भी नहीं. Right? And what are those no? Certain things like this. The preserved food items. Alright? The ready to eat food items, because they are the ones which have preservatives, which are phosphorus containing preservatives. And why are they dangerous? Because in these preservatives you have phosphorus in the inorganic form, and inorganic phosphorus gets absorbed to the level of 100%. the phosphorus coming from your food gets absorbed to the level of 60%, but then inorganic gets absorbed to the level of 100%. I remember a northeast patient of mine, a dialysis patient, जिसको मैंने कहा कि हाँ रोज के मर्रा में चिकन वगैरह खाओ, because he was northeast person and it is his dietary habit, and I told him the amount and things like that. For the convenience sake, what he did was उसने चिकन का नगेट का पूरा पैकेट अपने फ्रीजर में रख लिया और वो रोज उसको थोड़ा सा तल करके खा लेता था. Now when he came to me for the next session, I interviewed him, and when I found out this, then I said, oh God, I've done a mistake. I should have told him, knowing that he's a northeast guy, I should have taught him how to see the label. Now please teach your patients 4 numbers: 338, 339, 440, 442 and 452. Tell your patients कि ये देखना अगर ये नंबर है तो नहीं खाना, because those are the phosphate containing preservatives. And whenever you are prescribing your chicken and your fish, always tell your patient कि भैया वो जो traditional चीज थी कि अपने सामने कटवाना और खाना वही चीज करना, because you do not know, even if you have got it from the mosque, you're not very sure whether they've been injected. All right. So this is very, very important. Now coming to the second question, can our patients have palak after leaching? Well, we know that the recommendations for potassium comes to around 40 to 70 milliequivalents. You check on any recommendation, and that too in the stage 4 and 5 of CKD. And so, but then our nephrologists over here are a little more stringent, so they do not want in the stage 4 and 5 the potassium to go more than say 50 or 60, right? Now because our Indian bodies are different. Now let's plan a diet. Say if I want to plan a diet for a patient, giving him around 40 grams of protein and around say 50 milliequivalents of potassium. Now let's use the software, which I'm glad that quite a number of you are using the software called RADCAP. Now what I do, I select first the good quality protein depending upon the liking of the patient. हाँ भैया दूध पीते हो, पसंद है, अंडा खाते हो, वगैरह पूछ करके पहले उससे अच्छी क्वालिटी प्रोटीन पूछ लेती हूँ और वो मैं उसका लगा देती हूँ. And then I go and check how much of protein I have already adjusted. Yes, my first target is over. Out of the 40 gram protein, 20 gram I have achieved from good quality. Now what I do, I next include some amount of wheat flour, rice, so cereals I include, and then I include half a katori of some dal. Now, second, what I do, I include 2 katoris of vegetable, और इसमें मैं 1 कटोरी मैंने डाली है पालक आलू की सब्जी बिना लीचिंग किए हुए, राइट? नाउ कौन सी कटोरी? ये कटोरी. अब आप मुझसे पूछोगे दाल के लिए तो मैंने वो कटोरी यूज की, सब्जी के लिए काहे मैं ये कटोरी यूज कर रही हूँ? Right? Now let me tell you, I did a little small interview kind of things with my sweet girls who come for internship. I call them all. मैंने उनको ये कटोरियां दिखाई और मैंने कहा कि अच्छा बेटा सब लोग बताओ कौन सी कटोरी में सब्जी खाते हो. मैडम हम तो न्यूट्रिशनिस्ट हैं, हमें तो मालूम है कि कौन सी कटोरी में खाना है. Somebody pointed at this, somebody pointed, मैं तो इतना भी खाती हूँ. मैंने कहा really? Very nice. मैंने कहा ठीक है बेटा जाओ. जब चले गए मैंने क्या किया, आपने कुक को बुलाया, मैंने उसको ये कटोरी सबसे आखिरी वाली कटोरी पकड़ाई और मैंने कहा जो भी सब्जी बनी है ना इस कटोरी में डाल करके ले आओ. और आ करके मैंने क्या किया, एक प्लेट ली, उसमें डाल दी कटोरी. अब मैंने लड़कियों को वापस बुलाया. गर्ल्स, डू यू टेक दिस मच ऑफ वेजिटेबल एट वन गो? नो मैम, दिस इज सो मच. ये तो हम 2 दफा में खाते हैं. We Indians are very, very poor intakers of vegetable. Okay, now let me tell you. Now, the values which I'm showing you are not arbitrary values, okay? They have been standardized. Now, पालक आलू अगर मैंने ली है तो मैंने उसको standardize कैसे किया? मैंने एक गड्डी पालक के लिए उसमें 2 आलू डाले, उसमें अदरक लहसुन कितना डाला वो भी काउंट किया, उसमें टमाटर प्याज कितना डाला वो भी काउंट किया, उसमें मसाले कितने डाले वो भी काउंट किया है. That also I have taken into consideration because I wanted to see the real potassium value coming even from the spices. And then I put them into different katoris and put them into the software. Then नमक लिया है तो हीप वाला लिया है कि उसको लेवल करके लिया है, जीरा डाला है तो कैसे डाला है, that also I have done it. Okay, so this is a realistic value what I am showing you. Now 2 कटोरी मैंने सब्जी भी डाल दी, उसको एक फल भी दे दिया. Now I have met all my targets. प्रोटीन से लेकर के मेरे पूरा approximate principle I've done it. Now let me see कि वो एक कटोरी पालक आलू और एक कटोरी दूसरी सब्जी में मैंने डाली है. Let me see the total potassium what has come. Now the total potassium which I have achieved by putting all the things is around 1800 milligrams, which is around 45 milligrams. Now please note, this is not the correct value because we don't have values for paneer and we don't have values for rice. Okay? Now the quantity put is very small, so I can say that instead of 45 milligrams, it can be a little more but not beyond 50 milligrams. So can you see that without the leaching business, you can still achieve 50 milligrams. The only thing you have got to see, note that most of the vegetables after cooking, I'm not telling you the arbitrary values, not telling you the per 100 gram value, after cooking जिसमें सब प्याज टमाटर डाल करके मैंने almost बहुत सारी vegetables को standardize किया, and I found that a katori of these vegetables come anywhere from 3 to 7 milligrams, the most commonly eaten vegetables, right? Now when somebody is eating palak, you're going to just advise them कि भैया जिस दिन पालक खाओगे सुबह शाम दोनों टाइम मत खाना, शाम को कोई दूसरी सब्जी जरूर खाना, right? That's the only indication you're going to tell